hear from the mayor of Lorain, Ohio, Jack W. Bradley. Now, Lorain is another great port city on Lake Erie. It's about 25 miles from where we are, along the shoreline. And like Cleveland, it's a city that grew up with heavy industry and Great Lakes shipping. As a result, it has a long, deep relationship with Canada. Here to introduce Mayor Bradley is our own managing director, Steve Paley. Steve.
Hi, everyone. On behalf of the Canada-U.S. Law Institute, it is my distinct honor and pleasure to introduce our luncheon keynote speaker, Mayor Jack Bradley of Lorain, Ohio. For those of you not familiar with Northeast Ohio, as Steve just mentioned, Lorain is a city of over 60,000 people located on Lake Erie at the mouth of the Black River, about 25 miles west of Cleveland. It is one of the top 10 largest cities in Ohio as of the 2020 census. The city has a major port, which promotes waterborne commerce, economic development opportunities within the city, and public access to waterways. As Steve also mentioned, Lorain has a history of industry vital to the Canada-United States relationship, such as shipbuilding and automobile manufacturing. Nobel Prize laureate author Toni Morrison, which I didn't know from Lorain, but born in Lorain, once wrote about the city, quote, "This melting pot on the lip of America facing the cold but receptive Canada. What could go wrong?" Jack Bradley has been serving as the mayor of Lorain, Ohio since January 1st, 2020. Prior to his tenure as mayor, Mayor Bradley had an extensive career as a criminal defense attorney. He also has experience as a teacher, is a distinguished veteran, businessman, husband, and father. Mayor Bradley earned his undergraduate degree right here from Case Western Reserve University and his law degree from Cleveland State University right down the road. Mayor Bradley is known for his legal practice, for his dedication to clients and taking on difficult cases. He is a member of numerous local, state, and national bar associations, as well as member of the National Association of Criminal Defense Attorneys, and member of the Board of Directors of the Ohio Association of Criminal Defense Attorneys. Mayor Bradley has been recognized for his efforts in supporting the Latino community in Lorain, and a member of the USCM Homeless Task Force to urge reforms for veterans, children, and for those experience a lack of adequate housing. In his role as mayor, Bradley is a member of the Ohio Mayors Alliance, a bipartisan coalition of mayors from Ohio's largest cities, is involved with the Democratic Mayors Association, the United States Conference of Mayors, the Mayors Alliance to End Childhood Hunger, and Mayors Against Illegal Guns. Mayor Bradley also serves on the board of the Northeast Ohio Area-Wide Coordinating Agency. And notably for our conference today, Mayor Bradley is involved with the Great Lakes and St. Lawrence Cities Initiative, which is a binational coalition of over 325 municipal and regional U.S. and Canadian mayors and local officials working to advance the protection and restoration of the Great Lakes and St. Lawrence River Basin. In March, Mayor Bradley joined 29 other U.S. and Canadian mayors from this initiative in Washington to advocate for the concerns of cities along the Great Lakes on both sides of the border. The coalition met with congressional leaders and staff from the Great Lakes region states to discuss the economic impact of blanket tariffs on the region and the Canada-U.S. relationship. Mayor Bradley told Cleveland.com shortly after that, quote, "Canadians are good neighbors. They've always been our allies and our friends. Why would we want to not have a good relationship with the country we work together with to improve our economies and commerce along the Great Lakes?" With that sentiment in mind, we are grateful to have Mayor Jack Bradley here today, and please join me in welcoming him as our keynote luncheon speaker.
Well, thank you, everyone, for allowing me to be here with you today to present at this luncheon. And I'm going to start off by digressing, because I know we've had some speakers already that digress. So I just wanted to tell you a personal story. 50 years ago plus, I was here at the Botanical Garden where my future wife came to see me while I was here at Case Western Reserve, and we had broken up, and so she came to see me and to talk about possibly getting back together. And so we were in the Botanical Gardens, and we walked around the area, and that was the start of 53 years of marriage. So I think this is an appropriate place for people to come together. And so I think it's wonderful that this meeting, this 49th meeting of your organization is happening here at the Botanical Garden. You know, I never planned on being the mayor of the city of Lorain, Ohio. It sort of happened by happenstance. The mayor, who was seeking his third term, decided after winning the primary that he was going to take a job with the company that collected our garbage. And so they needed someone to run for mayor, and all the usual suspects, council members, auditor, so on and so forth, they had all run in the primary for their office. And under Ohio law, it was called a sore loser law, but it actually applied to winners also. And you could not run for a different office in the general election if you won the primary in the primary election for, you know, your auditor or council member. So they didn't have anyone to run for the Democrat Party. So my cousin, who was a county commissioner, called me up on the phone, and she said, "Hey, Jack, you should run for mayor." And I said, "Well, I'm really not interested. I like what I'm doing." Well, she called my wife and my daughter, and they said, "You need to slow down." And so I said, "Well, I'll think about it." Well, here I am in my second term as mayor, and they were wrong. You don't slow down, as Officer Brennan knows. I mean, Mayor Brennan knows. So, you know, in talking about addressing the situation that we have today with the tariffs and the United States and Canada having this tension between us, it kind of reminds me of when I took office, because I took office and then 2 months after I took office, COVID hit. And, you know, right away, I had members of council telling me, "You need to make 20% cuts. You need to, you know, cut our staff by 20%. You need to cut expenses by 20%. And I said, "You know what? Let's slow down a little bit. And let's not rush into rash decisions. And let's try to figure out a way to get through this thing without having to, you know, cut our staffs." And so I looked at some alternatives, and I found out that Ohio had what was called shared work, where you could actually have a person take a layoff for like 1 day a week and still work for the city for 4 days a week. And you know, the council members said, "Oh, it sounds too good to be true, and nobody's going to sign up for it." Well, I did some further research, and I found out that the federal government was giving people that were on unemployment $600 extra a week. So I got in touch with the Unemployment Bureau, and I said, "Hey, can these workers that I'm putting on shared work also get that $600? And they said yes. Well, I had people beating down the doors to take 1 day off, get a day's unemployment, but also get the bonus $600. So sometimes, you know, it looks like a bad situation, but maybe if we think it through, maybe it might turn out to be not as bad as we think. Today, I found out that President Trump actually made an executive order yesterday. And in that executive order, he's calling it Restoring America's Maritime Dominance. And it might be actually a good executive order because he's specifically identified the Great Lakes for inclusion in this order. And, I've been talking to a company called Barrett Maritime since 2020. And he wanted to bring a ship repair station to the city of Lorain. And, we've been working on it and talking about it, and he's been going to Washington, D.C., and we've tried to get this to happen in Lorain because at one time Lorain was part of American shipbuilding. And we build ships in Lorain. The 1,000-foot ore carriers we built in Lorain. We actually built 43 ships during the Second World War. So we have that ability to build ships. But we're going to need some cooperation with our Canadian neighbors because, these ships are going to have to come through the St. Lawrence. And so it's an opportunity that maybe, hopefully, the president realizes is Canada and the United States working together to get something done, not only for our economy, but also for the Canadian economy. So sometimes even the president might stumble upon something that is really a positive thing for our two countries. So I'll go back to my prepared remarks. Lorain is known as the International City, based upon our diverse nationalities, contributing to our city and its progress. Since becoming mayor, my focus has been on economic development, community engagement, and fostering partnerships that benefit our city's residents. So, I had the opportunity this year to attend the Great Lakes Day in Washington, D.C., as part of a delegation of mayors from both the United States and Canada. That was from March 5th through March 7th, as part of the Great Lakes and St. Lawrence Cities Initiative. I became involved with that initiative a little over a year ago, and it's been a really wonderful partnership and an opportunity to meet mayors from around the Great Lakes region. And, we work together, and we're bipartisan. We don't care about political affiliation. I know, an old mayor from New York City had said at one time, there's Democrats, there's Republicans, and then there's mayors. And that's the way we feel, that we all work together, and we don't really worry about a party affiliation. When we were there at the Great Lakes Day, our senators from Ohio had an opportunity to speak at a congressional breakfast that we had, and Senator Bernie Moreno, who's a new senator from the state of Ohio, had an opportunity to speak, and he certainly supports President Trump and his tariffs. But he mentioned that the reason that we were putting these tariffs on Canada was because of the fentanyl problem and the issue with the fentanyl coming in from Canada. Well, it turns out that I think the amount of fentanyl that comes in from Canada on a yearly basis wouldn't fill the bed of a pickup truck. And so far this year, I think it's been about 5 pounds. So it's nowhere near the amount of fentanyl that comes in from Mexico. And that's why I was happy to see that the U.S. Senate said that we're going to have to police this action by the president and saying that we're doing these tariffs because of a national emergency. Yes, there is a national emergency involving fentanyl, but it's not because of the fentanyl that's coming in from Canada, and I think that is not the excuse that we should use in imposing tariff on our Canadian neighbors. This is a picture that we took in Montreal around the picture of the Great Lakes in the harbor in Montreal, and these are mayors and family members, and people that represent the tribal nations around the Great Lakes, who just kind of gathered around the Great Lakes to show that we're all kind of united, and that we need to work together. Because the Great Lakes are not merely a body of water, they are the beating heart of our binational relationship, sustaining over 48 million people, generating billions in trade and economic activity, and supporting ecosystems that are as diverse as they are fragile. They are the source of drinking water, commerce, recreation, and cultural identity. Now, coming from the international city of Lorain, I understand the importance of cultural identity, as well as the other attributes of our Great Lakes. For the United States and Canada, as has been said earlier, the difference between our two countries is not just a border, it should be more of a bridge. The Great Lakes and the St. Lawrence represent an integrated economy of over $6 trillion in U.S. dollars and over $8 trillion in Canadian dollars. This translates to the world's third largest economy. This is a map that shows the type of trade that goes on between Canada, export and imports, with all the different states in the United States. It is fitting today that we gather as legal scholars, policymakers, and advocates to reflect on the laws and agreements that protect this precious resource. From the Boundary Water Treaty of 1909 to the Great Lakes Water Quality Agreement, our nations have shown what is possible when cooperation replaces conflict and shared stewardship guides public policy. The map on the screen shows the trade that occurs between the United States and Canada. In 2023, Ohio-Canada trade amounted to $39.7 billion, with exports to Canada of $21.8 billion. That's in the state of Ohio. And imports from Canada of $17.9 billion. It has been predicted that a trade war with Canada could result in a 1.6% decrease in the United States gross domestic product and a 2.6% decrease in the Canadian gross domestic product. We can't let this happen. So part of the mission of the trip to Washington, D.C. in March was to address three main concerns of the Great Lakes and St. Lawrence Cities Initiative. First of all, we wanted to address the Great Lakes Restoration Initiative that has historically enjoyed bipartisan congressional support. The Great Lakes Restoration Act of 2025 would authorize the act for an additional 5 years and increase its funding authorization level to $500 million per year. Now, a University of Michigan study found that for every dollar invested by the federal government in this program, local economies generate an estimated $3.35 in ancillary economic activity. Our second goal was to address the United States-Canada trade relationship, which represents 50% of our country's bilateral trade and supports a $6 trillion regional economy. We specifically opposed the 25% blanket tariffs. We felt the tariffs would undermine our regional economy, lead to higher prices, reduce our United States gross domestic product, as well as thousands of American jobs, and disrupt economic transformation in bringing clean industries who may have located in our region. We're already seeing the devastating effect tariffs are having on our economy in just a few days. As was said earlier, the Senate did pass Joint Resolution 37. We're hoping that the House of Representatives gets bipartisan support for the Senate resolution and that they pass it also, so that we, as mayors, will continue to work together to protect economic well-being in our communities. And we're going to continue to urge our House of Representatives to concur with the Senate resolution. Finally, we were advocating against the funding freezes that will cause costly delays in vital infrastructure projects, job losses, disruption of government services, and disruption of economic transformation. We met with members of the House and Senate to call on them to ensure the continued flow of congressionally appropriated federal funding without stipulation. Lorain was awarded $4 million by the efforts of Congressman Latta through congressional directed spending to help our lakefront. We're now in fear that that money may be in jeopardy. It's our hope, by advocating in Washington, D.C., that that money remains. I know, as a member of the Northeast Ohio Area-Wide Coordinating Agency, they were awarded millions of dollars for EV charging stations. I just heard yesterday that that money has been secured, but we were in fear that we were going to lose that money. And that was, that was going to affect Lorain and other cities in our 5-county region that is covered by NOACA. So hopefully we'll hear more good news about some of the federal funding that we've been sitting on needles and pins concerning in the last couple months. Some cities have actually spent dollars and hoping that, their awards or their grants would reimburse them for the dollars they've spent. Now they're afraid that they spent dollars that aren't going to be reimbursed. That would be devastating to cities that have limited, very limited budgets. And I didn't put my slide up fast enough. I'm not good at this stuff, believe me. In any event, in February of 2022, President Joe Biden visited Lorain to announce the historic $1 billion investment in the Great Lakes Restoration Initiative. This funding was made possible by the bipartisan infrastructure law with the aim of accelerating the cleanup and restoration of the Great Lakes. President Biden's visit underscored the importance of bilateral collaboration in preserving and revitalizing these waters. Now, we've undertaken some efforts in Lorain to remediate our Black River, which is a deep water port off of Lake Erie. We've invested over $16 million in the remediation of the Black River, which was a designated area of concern. The city was able to remediate former United States Steel property that was, a brownfield. And this cleanup has cleared up our river and seen fish and fowl return to our area. As a result of cleaning up the Black River, we were able to secure another $16 million in construction of the Black River dredge material reuse facility that manages and repurposes dredge material from our river and makes it available for the sale of topsoil. So we took clean dredge material, we dewater it, and we are then able to sell it to people in need of topsoil. In 2024, we realized over $1.8 million from the processing of this material. As you can see, the initiative represents a significant commitment to environmental stewardship and highlights the crucial role of legal frameworks in facilitating cross-border cooperation for the protection of our shared natural resources. Now, this was all made possible by the remediation of the Black River. The circular objects in the picture are called geopools, and they are used to dewater the dredge materials that is produced to maintain our river as a deep water port. These geopools in the city of Lorain are the first of their kind in the United States. And these are pictures of the former steel mill in Lorain, Republic Steel. As I said earlier, Lorain has deep roots in the steel industry. But in 2018, when President Trump first imposed his tariffs on steel, Republic Steel and President Trump made a big announcement that 1,000 jobs were going to be coming back to Lorain in the steel industry. Well, it's sad to say, but that never materialized. So these tariffs did not bring 1,000 jobs to the city of Lorain. As a matter of fact, Republic hardly even opened up again. We had at one point maybe 100 jobs because we were processing billets that were being manufactured in Canton, Ohio at the other Republic facility. And so, you know, these retaliatory tariffs impacted various industries in the United States, not only the steel industry, but also the automotive industry and agricultural industries, which are integral to Ohio's economy. So, you know, I was working with Republic Steel. I was talking with them. They were having some problems with the Ohio EPA because the steel that they were producing in Canton was lead-based steel. And the levels of lead that was getting into the air in Canton was causing the Ohio Environmental Protection Agency to have some concerns. They were going to close down the operation in Canton. So I got a call from one of the representatives of Republic Steel asking me if I would get in touch with the Ohio EPA and see if we could do something. And I did reach out to them. I talked to them, and they said, hey, we don't want to shut down Canton. We don't want to hurt the 100 or so jobs in Lorain. So as long as Canton and Republic Steel work with us, you don't have to worry about Lorain shutting down. Well, it lasted for about a year, and then Republic just quit making steel in the United States, and they don't have any intention of bringing back the steel industry in the city of Lorain. I was on the phone with one of the owners. They're a Mexican family, very close-knit family. It's 3 sons and a father. And I said, are you interested in bringing back steel operations to Lorain? And he says, no, we're out of the steel business. Although they are interested in trying to redevelop that property or get someone who's interested in that property to redevelop it. But it was funny because I could not get in touch with Republic Steel for about a year and a half during 2023 and half of 2024. They would not return my calls, any calls from the city of Lorain. They didn't want to talk to us. We had some connections where we were told that they were instructed not to talk to the city of Lorain. And so I said, you know, we're going to have to do something. And so I asked our building department, I said, you guys have drones, don't you? I said, well, why don't we do this? Let's fly some drones over Republic Steel and show some of the code violations that are occurring on Republic Steel. So we flew the drones over Republic Steel, and we took the photographs that we gathered, and we took it to a judge. And we got a search warrant, and then we got the Ohio EPA and Lorain County Public Health and our police and our fire and all kind of other partners, and we invaded the property. And we We cited them for every possible code violation, violations, EPA violations that we could. Guess what? Republic's now talking to us. So we talk to them probably on a week or every other week basis. So, when somebody doesn't want to talk to you, we know there's legal ways to get them to talk to us. Now, my law director wasn't real happy with me because he thought, what are you doing, flying drones? Maybe you're violating somebody's rights. I said, well, hey, if they take us to court, at least we'll be talking to each other. So, how lawyers think. So that's what we did. We also have Ford Motor Company in Lorain County. And so this is part of a substantial part of the global market that we deal with in Lorain County, especially with Canada. Canada is Ohio's #1 export market. In 2024, Ohio exported billions of dollars in goods, with transportation equipment leading the way with $16.3 billion in exports. I can tell you that with companies such as Ford Motor Company in Lorain County, I'm convinced that there will be effect on our local economy. And there's been predictions that car prices are going to go up by $5,000 to $10,000, depending on the vehicles. This will result in companies having to reassess their supply chains and sourcing to mitigate the financial impact of the tariffs. They must also factor in reduced consumer demands, which could affect local businesses and certainly the employment of citizens in the city of Lorain, Ohio. Nevertheless, it was recently reported in Crane's Cleveland Business that vehicles from Canada, in compliance with the free trade rules, will be subject to a tariff only on their non-American content. This still means that imports of steel and aluminum are now taxed at 25%. And our vehicles depend on, the F-150 trucks that are being made in Avon Lake are aluminum bodies, not steel bodies, aluminum bodies. So this is going to also include certain auto parts, such as bumpers, stampings, and lug nuts. These tariffs are going to have an effect on my city. They're going to have an effect on our county. They're going to have an effect on all citizens in the state of Ohio. And I don't think we should fool ourselves on that. So that comes to my involvement with the Great Lakes and St. Lawrence Cities Initiative. I've also become involved as a member of the Mayor's Commission on Economic Transformation as part of the Great Lakes and St. Lawrence Cities Initiative. We are currently developing an action plan for the Great Lakes and St. Lawrence economic transformation, looking at the next 10 years from 2025 to 2035. The key areas will cover industry transformation, energy transformation, water transformation, and transportation transformation. This action plan will provide members of the city's initiative with a roadmap to advance economic transformation over the next 10 years. We are committed to making the Great Lakes a symbol of border cooperation, friendship, and ingenuity. Together, we can work on cooperative solutions to protect jobs, maintain trade relationships, and continue economic stability. The initiative represents over 270 municipal, government leaders, and tribal leaders with concerns about real people, real livelihoods, and real communities. We're going to be meeting in May in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, for our annual conference. This will include not only cities from the United States, but cities in Canada. We represent 8 United States and 2 Canadian provinces. Our basin generates trillions in economic output annually. It is our vision to maintain our collective status as an economic powerhouse and safeguard our fresh water, which is a great resource for all of our cities along the Great Lakes, as we adapt economically to attract and retain sustainable industries and remain a vibrant place to live, work, and play. The Great Lakes region has over 70 years of cooperation between our two great nations. We have become a global powerhouse of over 100 million people and 50 million jobs occupying our region. Based upon the integration of our supply chains, there is no such thing as an American or Canadian product. We have one Great Lake economy. I'm going to end with a quote from Mayor Malik Evans of Rochester, New York. There is an African proverb that says, "When the elephants fight, it's the grass that suffers," which perfectly illustrates how a trade war between the United States and Canada will impose the greatest underserved suffering on low-income and middle-class consumers and small businesses. This applies to Rochester. It also applies to Lorain. We must continue to speak as one voice, calling for continued investment, bold policy, and cross-border cooperation. As I said, the Great Lakes are not a boundary between nations. They are a bridge that connects our past with our future, our communities with our ecosystems, and our local hopes with national policies. Together, we can all get through the challenges we now face and keep the bridge between our two countries open in a spirit of cooperation and joint future prosperity. I want to thank you all for being part of what makes our two countries great. Thank you very much. I was sort of glad that I was not included on the sheet of ratings, so I guess I get to benefit from everybody else that's been rated today. But thank you very much for the opportunity.
Mayor, I wonder if we were talking earlier about how the conflict between the U.S. and Canada is starting to show up at the people-to-people level. In working with some of the mayors on the Canadian side, have you started to feel that, we'll call it the Trump effect? Have you started to see that negativity, and is that creating some hesitation in terms of cooperation or making you want to do even more?
Well, first of all, it does make me want to do more, but just from our trip in March to Washington, D.C., these were all my friends, and there was no bad thoughts or bad communication. It was just a spirit of working together, and we're certainly looking forward to getting together again in May to talk with each other. But mayors are not that concerned with politics. We're concerned about helping the people that we represent. And so, we're the closest to the people. And so the President of the United States, not much connection. Senators, not that much connection. Even our representatives. There was that comment about, people in the United States need to start doing something. And someone mentioned that, there has been over 1,000 different rallies. In Lorain, Ohio, this past week, Governor Tim Walz from Wisconsin came to Lorain to have a people's town hall. over 2,000 people showed up at our high school to listen to Governor Walz speak. So if anything, people in the United States have become energized, and people are speaking up and letting their voices be heard and wanting to hear from their leaders. And so I'm telling you, town halls can make a difference. We had a traffic signal that went out at a intersection in the city of Lorain a couple years ago, and so the council person called the town hall, and myself and my safety service director went there to explain to the people that the traffic studies that indicated that light wasn't even necessary, and that we had made a decision that once that traffic signal went through its useful life, that we were just going to have it discontinued anyhow. Well, 75 people showed up, and they were mad, and they wanted that signal. And by the time we walked out of there, I told our public properties manager, get somebody to fix that signal. And it's still working, and people are happy, and that's what town halls are all about. So our representatives, our lawmakers need to get connected with the people. They need to hear from the people, because that's how change is made. It's not done by Zoom. It's not done by letters. It's done by face-to-face interaction, and it works. It definitely works. At least it works with me. And I'm sure it works with Mayor Brennan. Thank you very much. Oh, another question.
I have a question for you, Mayor. This city's initiative is very intriguing, and I was wondering, does the city's initiative have a plan or a strategy to take, Canadian mayors and U.S. mayors along the Great Lakes and advocate in Washington to say, what you feel about these tariffs?
So that's what we did when we went there in March, is we had a plan, and I'm telling you, they worked us from 7 o'clock in the morning until late in the evening. And we not only met with members of the Senate, members of the House, members of the administration, and they heard our voices, because every meeting we had was both Canadian and U.S. mayors, and they heard from us. And I got in trouble because I had made a statement to the Plain Dealer, the Cleveland Plain Dealer, that we didn't meet with our senators from Ohio, John Husted and Bernie Moreno, because they really didn't have their staff in place and their offices organized. And Bernie Moreno texted me and said I was full of crap. And I said, well, I was really glad I got to talk to you at the congressional breakfast, and I'm glad that you at least heard some of my comments at the breakfast. But that's what we do. We just try to, not get into a match. I didn't fire back some rude remark to our senator. I'm hoping that he and I can continue to work together and, make things happen that are good for the United States. And I think having a good relationship with our Canadian neighbors makes us a better country and really does benefit our citizens. Other questions? Okay, thank you very much.